Welcome back to the deep dive. It's great to have you with us today.
It really is.
Usually when we sit down at these microphones, we're kind of on a hunt. We're looking for a strategy or a hack
Mhm.
or a definitive answer to some complex problem.
Yeah, that's the standard operating procedure. We start with the idea that there's a right way to do things, and our job is to uncover it.
Totally. And I mean, we live in an information economy. The currency is certainty, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. The currency is certainty.
Yeah.
If you can stand up in a meeting and say, I know exactly what's going to happen next quarter, you get the job.
You get the job, you get the
It's the
investment.
clicks. It's all about projecting confidence.
Exactly. But today
Yeah.
we're flipping that entire script on its head.
Completely.
We're looking at a source that argues that maybe, just maybe, the most intelligent thing a human being can do is admit they have absolutely no clue what's going on.
It is the ultimate counterintuitive take in a world obsessed with expertise.
It really is. We are dissecting this reflective manifesto. I mean, it's a blog post, technically, but it feels heavier than that.
It does. It has weight.
It's titled, I Am Certain of Nothing. It was published on September 8, 2025, by a writer named Jimmy Perez. And I have to say, reading this, it felt like taking a deep breath after holding it for a decade.
I had the same reaction. It stands out so much. In a digital landscape that is usually just screaming for your attention with 10 steps to mastery or...
The one truth you're missing.
Yes, that one. And here's Perez just kind of standing there quietly, hands in his pocket saying, I don't know.
And what we want to do today is not just summarize his post. We want to really unpack the philosophy behind it.
Yeah.
Because for him, saying, I don't know, isn't an admission of defeat. It's a strategy.
It's an active stance. That's the mission today, right? To explore this concept he has of fluid beliefs.
Fluid beliefs, the idea of finding value in a religious community without swallowing the dogma whole.
And this is a big one, the psychological necessity of writing, not just as communication, but as a tool for sanity.
Right. And I want to be really clear to you, listening right up front.
Mm.
We aren't here to decide if Jimmy Perez is right about his theology or his politics or anything like that. That's not the point.
No, we're here to look at his mindset. This is a deep dive into what you could call intellectual humility.
Yeah, that's it. It's about that tension. The tension between the conviction we all crave and the curiosity we actually need to learn and to grow.
That's a perfect framing.
So let's get into it. And I think the right place to start is where he starts with his persona. Because how you introduce yourself to the world, I mean, that says a lot about what you value.
It's your opening statement.
Yeah. And usually when I go to a conference or I'm scrolling through LinkedIn, the bios are always a flex. Ex-Google, founder of this, award-winning that. It's armor.
It's absolutely armor. It's
Yeah.
a signal that says, I have value because I have achieved these specific, measurable things. It's meritocratic signaling.
But let's look at Jimmy Perez's bio. He lists his roles, but the hierarchy, the order he puts them in is fascinating. He writes, father, husband, son, brother, colleague, citizen, employee, and employer.
I'm so glad you caught that order. It's a hierarchy of intimacy, isn't it? He starts with the biological, the relational, father, husband. These are roles you can't just resign from.
Right. You can quit a job, you can stop being a colleague, but you are always a father.
Always. And son, that one really stood out to me.
Me too.
Yeah.
You just don't see grown men listing son in their professional style bio very often. What do you think that's about?
I think it implies dependency in a good way. It acknowledges that he came from somewhere, that he's part of a lineage. It grounds
It's
him.
a statement of humility right out of the gate.
It is. And then only after he establishes all those human connections does he get to the professional stuff, employee and employer.
And then he wraps the whole thing up with this one phrase. Just a simple man attempting to be his best version.
Just a simple man.
Okay, so I have to play devil's advocate here for a second. It's 2025 in the Post. The world is incredibly complex. AI is doing half our thinking. Isn't calling yourself a simple man a bit quaint? Or maybe even a cop-out?
I can absolutely see why you'd say that. On the surface, it could sound like false modesty. Oh, little old me. But I actually think it's a form of rebellion
Rebellion against what?
against the pressure to be optimized. We're all supposed to be biohackers and thought leaders and disruptors. These are all words that imply complexity and aggression.
And a kind of technological identity.
Precisely. By calling himself a simple man, Perez is opting out of that whole rat race. He's saying, I am not an algorithm to be optimized. I am a human being trying to be decent.
That is a really important distinction, and it changes the stakes of being wrong.
How so?
Well, if your identity is built on being the smartest guy in the room or the thought leader, then every time you're wrong, it's an identity crisis. It's a fundamental threat to who you are.
But if your identity is father or simple man,
You can be wrong about the economy or about politics or about a philosophical idea, and it doesn't shatter who you are at your core.
exactly. It lowers the stakes of intellectual debate. And that lowering of the stakes is what allows him to make this huge shift he describes right in the first section of the post.
This is the quote that I think hooks everyone.
It's so relatable. He writes, "When I was younger, I thought I knew a lot. Now I know that I know very little, perhaps nothing at all."
Oh man, I felt that in my bones. I remember being 22. I had read maybe 3 books on economics, and I was absolutely ready to fix the global banking system. I was insufferable.
Weren't we all? I mean, that's the Dunning-Kruger effect in action, right?
Let's unpack that for anyone who might not know the term. It's worth explaining.
So the Dunning-Kruger effect is a cognitive bias. And basically it says that when you have very low competence in a specific area, you tend to dramatically overestimate your ability.
You know so little that you don't even realize how much you don't know.
Exactly. You're standing on what the psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger called Mount Stupid.
Mount Stupid. It's such a perfect visual. I've built a summer home there many times.
We've all got real estate on Mount Stupid, but then as you learn more, as you gain more experience, you start to slide down the other side.
Into what they call the Valley of Despair.
Right, and that's where you realize, oh my God, this is incredibly complicated. I don't know anything. And Perez, in this post, is writing to us from that valley.
But the beautiful thing is he doesn't sound despairing at all. He sounds liberated.
He sounds free because he's not trying to climb back up another mountain of certainty. He's just decided to set up camp in the valley of, I don't know.
And he even gives himself a label for this role. It's in his byline. He calls himself an author, blogger, thought-provoker, critical thinker.
That one thought-provoker is doing a lot of work.
It really is. He's not a teacher. He's not a guru.
And that's a critical distinction. A teacher claims to have the answer and is here to give it to you. A guru claims to be the answer.
But a provoker. A
Yeah.
provoker is just a catalyst.
Yeah, he's just saying, I am going to poke you. I am going to say something that might annoy you or confuse you or challenge you, but the goal is to get your gears turning. He isn't taking responsibility for your conclusion.
He's just taking responsibility for the spark.
Exactly. And that really sets the stage for the rest of his philosophy. He isn't preaching, he is poking.
Which leads us directly into what I think is the most controversial, or at least the most challenging part of his worldview.
This is where it gets messy for a lot of people.
The fluidity of his beliefs. He writes, and this is a direct quote, "I admit that one day I may lean toward philosophy, another toward Christianity, another toward atheism. It depends on where my mind drifts that day."
Where my mind drifts. I mean, that is such a passive, gentle, almost poetic way to describe what is usually a violent internal conflict for people.
Okay, but let's be honest. Is it healthy? I mean,
Yeah.
seriously. If I am your friend, and on Tuesday you're a hardcore atheist quoting Nietzsche at me over coffee, and then on Wednesday you're singing hymns and talking about the nature of salvation, I'm going to think you're unstable. I'm going to have a hard time trusting your judgment on anything.
And that is the standard societal reaction.
Yeah.
So we value consistency above almost everything else. We want people to pick a team.
You have to pick a team. Your team reason or your team faith. Your team red or team blue. If you hop back and forth between them.
We label you as flaky or unprincipled or confused.
Right. Flip-flopper is one of the worst insults you can throw at a politician.
It is. But I would argue that Perez isn't being flaky here. I think he's being hyper honest about the human condition. I think most people do drift.
You really think so?
I do. I think the devout believer has moments of cold, hard atheism at 3 a.m. when a tragedy strikes. And I think the rigid, diehard atheist has moments of transcendent wonder, looking at a sunset or holding a newborn, that feel religious.
But they just suppress it. They push it down.
They suppress it to maintain their identity. They push it down because it doesn't fit the label on their bio. Atheist, Christian. Perez has just decided to take the filter off.
So he's not confused, he's just unfiltered.
I think so. He's saying, look, the human mind is responsive to reality, and sometimes reality looks like a cold, mechanical, meaningless universe. And sometimes it looks and feels like a divine plan. Why should I pretend I only ever see one side of that coin?
It's like that old Walt Whitman quote, right? Do I contradict myself? Very well, then I contradict myself. I am large. I contain multitudes.
Precisely. And Perez knows people will struggle with this. He explicitly addresses the fear. He writes, "I am not afraid of being misunderstood, of being judged, or even of contradicting myself."
That fear of contradiction is so powerful, though, especially with the internet. We're all terrified that someone is going to dig up a tweet or a post from 5 years ago that contradicts what we're saying today.
We weaponize consistency against each other.
We absolutely do. But think about the cost of that. If you were terrified of contradicting your past self, you can never learn. You can never grow.
You're just defending a fortress. If you think exactly the same way about the world today as you did 10 years ago, you haven't been alive for 10 years. You've just been defending a position.
And Perez is tearing down the fortress walls.
But he does have one fear, and this is important.
This is the anchor.
Yes.
Yes.
He says the only thing he does care about is leading anyone away from the truth.
Let's chew on that for a second. What's the distinction he's making there?
It's the distinction between his personal journey and his public impact. It separates his ego, I want to be right, from his ethics. I don't want to cause you harm.
So he doesn't mind looking foolish himself.
No. He doesn't mind if you think he's confused or inconsistent.
But he is terrified that his confusion might confuse you in a dangerous way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like a guide in the woods saying, hey, I'm exploring this path over here. I think it goes to the river, but I am not 100% sure, so please don't bet your life on my map.
Which, ironically, makes me trust him more.
So much more. If a guide screams, I know the exact way, follow me, and then marches confidently into a swamp, I'm angry.
Right. You feel betrayed.
But if a guide says, I'm figuring it out as I go, follow at your own risk, I respect the honesty. I might even choose to walk with him knowing we're exploring together.
Okay, so we have this guy with a fluid, shifting worldview. He's an atheist on Tuesday, a Christian on Wednesday. But he doesn't just sit at home thinking these thoughts in a vacuum. He takes action.
Right.
And this brings us to the next really interesting section on religion as a practice. Because apparently, Jimmy Perez, the guy who might be an atheist today, goes to church.
This is fascinating to me. He says he's drawn to studies of religious practice, particularly Christianity. But notice the phrasing. He's very precise.
Studies of practice.
He isn't saying he is drawn to the dogma or the theology. He's drawn to the doing, the rituals, the community, the behaviors.
And he clarifies immediately that he lacks unshakable faith. So he isn't sitting in the pew because he's convinced he's saved and everyone else is damned. He's there for another reason.
And that reason is wisdom. He observes that the Christian community contains some of the wisest people he's ever met.
But how is he defining wisdom here? Because that's a loaded word.
It's key. This is the key to the whole section. He doesn't say wisest because they know the Bible better than anyone else or can argue theology. He says they are wise because, and this is his definition, they genuinely seek to become the best versions of themselves.
That sounds almost secular. That sounds like self-help language you'd hear at a Tony Robbins seminar, but he's applying it to religion.
It's Aristotelian. It's virtue ethics. He's judging the tree by its fruit. He looks at these people in his community and he sees kindness. He sees patience. He sees people trying to be better fathers, better mothers, better neighbors. And he says, whatever they're doing, it's working. I want some of that.
So he's separating the community utility from the supernatural belief.
That's the perfect way to phrase it. It's the argument for orthopraxy over orthodoxy.
Break that down. Orthodoxy versus orthopraxy.
Okay, so orthodoxy means right belief. It's about having the correct set of theological doctrines in your head. It's a very cerebral, creed-based approach.
And orthopraxy.
Orthopraxy means right practice. It emphasizes conduct, ethics, ritual, and community life. It's less about what you believe and more about what you do. Perez seems to be saying, I'm not sure about the orthodoxy part. The belief stuff is fuzzy for me. But I can see with my own eyes that the orthopraxy, the practice, the community, the charity, the reflection, it works. It produces good people.
But isn't that a little, I don't know, utilitarian? Is he just using the church as a life hack?
Yeah.
Is he being a spiritual tourist?
I think he would argue he's using it as a classroom. He says he attends to learn, to be exposed to different perspectives. He views the sermon not as a command from on high, but as a perspective to be weighed and considered.
Like it's a lecture.
Exactly. It turns the church into a university for the soul. And he's auditing the class. He's there to learn, not necessarily to get a degree in Christianity.
And it's not the only university he's attending. This is where it gets really interesting. We got to look at his blog roll. And can we just pause for a second and appreciate the wonderfully retro vibe of a blog roll
It's such a throwback to an earlier, more connected version of the internet. It's a web of trust. It's like saying, here are the other classrooms I visit.
And his list is all over the map. It perfectly illustrates this fluidity we've been talking about. On one hand, he follows a blog called Diary of a Christian Mystic.
Which is deep, experiential, first-person spiritual content. Very internal.
But right next to that, he's following philosophy through photography, and another one called My Trauma Secrets and Healing Journey, and another called Positive Health Leadership.
It's an incredibly eclectic curriculum, isn't it? The spiritual, the aesthetic, the psychological, and the practical.
What does a reading list like that tell you about a person's mind? How they're trying to build a worldview?
It tells you that he's a synthesizer. He is not looking for one single theory of everything from one source. He's building a mosaic. He's taking a tile from the mystic, maybe, to learn about inner peace or contemplation.
Okay. Then he takes a tile from the photographer.
To learn how to see the world more clearly, how to frame it, how to find meaning in the visual. I looked up that philosophy through photography blog. The tagline is something like, a photograph shouldn't be just a picture, it should be a philosophy.
So he's looking for meaning in the visual world, not just in ancient texts.
Exactly. And then you have My Trauma Secrets. That tells you he isn't just looking for positive vibes only. He is willing to look at the dark stuff, the brokenness, the parts of the human experience we usually hide.
And then the Positive Health Leadership blog, which is about application, about how to act in the world.
It's the full stack. The inner life from the mystic, the outer world from the photographer, the broken past from the trauma blog, and the effective future from the leadership blog. He's trying to understand the full human condition.
It's the behavior of a true seeker, isn't it? A seeker doesn't care where the gold comes from. They just want the gold. A dogmatist only wants gold from their approved mine.
Right. And Perez is mining everywhere.
But, okay, this leads to a practical problem. If you are taking in all this input, Christian mysticism, trauma theory, leadership advice, philosophy, photography, that is a lot of noise. That's a lot of potentially conflicting information. How do you keep your head from just exploding?
You need a processing mechanism. You need a way to sort through it all. And for Perez, that mechanism is writing.
This is the section where he drops a Jordan Peterson quote.
Right. Writing is the highest form of thought.
Now look, Peterson is a polarizing figure, obviously, and we're not here to debate him.
Not at all. But Perez is doing that thing again. He's mining for gold. He doesn't care if you like Peterson or hate him as a public figure. He thinks this specific idea is true and useful.
And is it? Cognitively speaking, is writing really the highest form of thought?
In many ways, yes. Because thinking inside your own head is usually just ruminating. It's looping. You worry about the future, you replay an argument from yesterday, you wonder what's for dinner. It's a fog. It has no edges, no structure.
It's like trying to hold water in your hands. It just slips through.
That's a perfect analogy. But writing forces structure. You cannot write a coherent sentence without a subject and a verb. You have to make a choice. You have to take that cloud of anxiety and turn it into a statement. You have to collapse the wave function of your thoughts into something concrete.
And Perez says this explicitly. He writes, when I write or speak my thoughts aloud, they take shape and structure.
They take shape and structure. That's the key.
So the blog isn't a performance for him. It's a tool. It's his personal operating system for his brain.
It's a forcing function. He admits that mere reflection is less effective for him. Writing helps him see and understand the subject more clearly. He isn't writing primarily to teach us. He's writing to explain the world to himself.
You know, that completely changes how I read his work. If I think he's trying to preach to me, my defenses might go up. I might get critical.
Of course.
But if I realize I'm just watching a guy organize his own mental attic, it feels different. It feels less like a lecture and more like
an invitation, like he's thinking out loud and inviting you to think alongside him.
But he does share it. He hits the publish button. He even calls it oversharing. Why? If this is just a personal tool for organizing his thoughts, why put it out there on the internet where people can judge him and misunderstand him?
Because of the connection. I think that's the answer. He writes, I know I am not alone. He knows there are other people out there grappling with the same questions about beliefs and direction.
So by publishing his messy, unfinished thoughts, he's sending up a flare.
He is. He's signaling to them, hey, I'm over here. I'm confused too. You're not the only one.
It's vulnerability as a service.
Yes, that's brilliant. In a world where everyone is curating their life on social media to look perfect and certain, admitting you were confused is a profound act of service. It says to others, it's okay, you weren't crazy. He connects with others who are grappling. He creates a little digital campfire for the uncertain.
I love that image. A campfire for the confused. Which is most of us, if we're being honest.
I think so.
But here's the paradox that really stuck with me. It's the thing that I kept circling back to. We have the Tanan who champions uncertainty, who lives in the gray, who changes his mind as his mind drifts.
The ultimate fluid thinker.
And yet, when he lists his heroes, who does he pick?
He picks the most certain people in the history of the world.
Exactly. This is section 5 in his post, The Heroes of Conviction. He lists the enlightened figures, Jesus, Buddha, Krishna. Okay, you can argue those are divine or semi-divine figures. But then he lists the humans. Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., Mother Teresa.
People of absolute, unwavering, ironclad conviction.
Right. These are not people who woke up on a Tuesday and thought, yeah, maybe I'll take a day off from the whole civil rights movement.
Or, this nonviolent resistance thing is hard. Maybe I'll try something else.
These are people who went to jail, who starved themselves, who literally died for what they believed in. So my question is, why does the uncertain man worship the certain man?
I think it's the paradox of admiration. We often admire the traits that we lack or that we feel we lack. Perez looks at himself and he sees fluidity, doubt, drift. He looks at Martin Luther King Jr. and he sees a laser beam of purpose.
It's like a person who can't carry a tune watching a virtuoso violinist. You're just in awe of an ability that feels almost superhuman to you.
I think that's exactly it. And I think he recognizes that that level of conviction is an energy source. The reason Gandhi could challenge the British Empire, the reason MLK could change America, was because they weren't paralyzed by, on the other hand.
They weren't drifting.
They weren't drifting. They had a North Star. They had certainty. And that certainty allows for massive world-changing action. Uncertainty is good for learning, but certainty is what's required for leading a movement.
So Perez is standing on the sidelines, watching the game, respecting the players immensely, but admitting he doesn't have the jersey yet. He hasn't been called up to the team.
He calls their stories pathless journeys. He values engaging with those who have shared their journeys openly. He respects that they walked into the darkness with a conviction, that he feels he doesn't possess himself.
And he says he holds deep respect for their unshakable faith. He doesn't resent it or mock it. That is a key difference.
Yeah.
A lot of modern skeptics, they resent faith. They call it a delusion. They call it dangerous.
Perez calls it beautiful, even from the outside.
Why do you think that is? What's the difference in his approach?
Because he assumes their intent is good. Remember his only fear, leading anyone away from the truth. He looks at Jesus and Buddha and MLK, and he assumes they were doing their absolute best to lead people toward the truth as they saw it. He aligns with their mission, their intent, even if he can't replicate their mindset.
And he leaves the door open for himself. He doesn't shut it. He writes, perhaps one day I will feel the same.
That one word, perhaps, is doing so much work in that sentence. He isn't closing the book. He isn't saying, I will never be a believer. He is saying, I am not one yet. It is a posture of waiting, of openness.
Which brings us to the concluding metaphor of the entire piece. And honestly, I think this is the most powerful and summarizing image he uses. If he's not an expert and he's not a saint and he's not a guru, then what is he?
He's a child.
Content to journey as a child.
Curious, learning, and aware of how little I truly know.
It circles right back to the beginning, doesn't it? The difference between the arrogant young man on Mount Stupid who thought he knew it all
and the wise older man who realizes he's just a child still figuring things out.
It's the concept of beginner's mind from Zen Buddhism.
Exactly. Joshin. The idea is, in the beginner's mind there are many possibilities, but in the expert's there are few.
If you're an expert, you stop looking. You think you already have the map, so you stop paying attention to the territory.
But if you're a child, you have no map. You are just exploring the terrain itself. Every bug is interesting. Every shadow is a potential mystery. The world is alive with possibility.
So in a way, his uncertainty is the very thing that keeps him intellectually and spiritually alive.
I think it's the antidote to the stagnation of age. As we get older, our beliefs tend to calcify. We get set in our ways. We know what we think. Perez is actively fighting that calcification with a daily dose of curiosity. He is refusing to harden.
Refusing to harden. That is a beautiful way to put it. I want to zoom out for a second, though. We've broken down the persona, the fluid beliefs, the heroes, the child metaphor. But for the listener sitting in traffic right now or doing the dishes, What is the practical utility of this? Because most of us can't just float around being fluid all day. We have deadlines, we have mortgages, we have to make decisions with incomplete information.
I think the number one utility is stress reduction.
Okay, say more about that. How does this reduce stress?
Well, think about where most of our stress comes from. It usually comes from the gap between our expectations and reality. We expect the world to be orderly and make sense. We expect other people to agree with us. We expect our 5-year plans to work out perfectly.
And when they don't, we panic. We get angry. We get anxious.
Exactly. Perez's philosophy, this wisdom of uncertainty, it removes the expectation. If you start from the premise that you know nothing, you aren't shocked when the world is chaotic. You aren't personally offended when someone disagrees with you because you're not even sure you agree with you.
You become like water. You flow around the obstacle instead of crashing against it.
You become the bamboo instead of the oak. You've heard that one, right? The mighty oak is rigid and certain, and it snaps in the storm. The bamboo is fluid and flexible, and it bends, and so it survives. Jimmy Perez is trying to teach us how to be the bamboo.
And I think he's giving us permission. That's the biggest takeaway for me personally. He's giving us all permission to be inconsistent.
Permission to be human.
Yeah. He's saying you don't have to have a take on everything. You don't have to pick a side in the culture war today. You can just be. You can be a work in progress.
And you can participate in a community like a church or a political party or a book club without agreeing with 100% of the rules. You can take the good and leave the bad. You can be a simple man or a simple woman who just tries to be a good neighbor, and that's enough.
You don't need to be right to be good. That feels like the sticky note I'm putting on my monitor after this deep dive.
It's a profoundly liberating concept, isn't it?
It really is. And the writing part, I think that is so actionable for everyone listening. You don't have to start a blog. You don't have to tweet your every thought. But the simple act of getting the thoughts out of your head and onto a page.
It structures the chaos, whether it's a journal you keep under your bed or a voice memo you record on your phone or a letter to a friend you never actually send. It helps you see what you actually believe versus what you just think you believe in the fog of your mind.
So we have unpacked the wisdom of uncertainty. We have looked at this journey from the arrogance of youth to the humility of experience. But I want to leave you, the listener, with one final provocation. This is something that kept nagging at me while I was reading Perez's piece.
Okay, let's hear it.
Perez mentions, almost hopefully, that he might one day feel that unshakable faith he so admires in his heroes. He sees it as a potential destination, like one day I will arrive at certainty.
Right, it's the end of the journey for him.
But based on everything we have discussed today, is arriving actually the goal?
That is the big question, isn't it?
Is the ultimate prize knowing the answer? Or is the state that he is in right now, that childlike wonder, that beginner's mind, that openness, that fluidity, is that actually the higher, more alive form of existence?
Because if you arrive, the journey ends. If you find the absolute final answer, the mystery dies. And so does the curiosity.
Maybe the tragedy isn't being lost. Maybe the tragedy is thinking you found the final unchangeable map.
There's a line at the end of his post. He says, I am in love with this journey we call life. You can't be in love with the journey if you're obsessed with the destination.
He's in love with the wandering.
And in his writing, he invites us all to wander with him.
Well, I certainly enjoyed wandering through his mind today. It is it's rare to find a source that makes you feel calmer and more centered just by analyzing it.
It was a real pleasure to unpack this one, a deep breath, like you said at the start.
For everyone listening, thank you for diving deep with us. Maybe today, just as an experiment, give yourself permission to say, I don't know, at least once. See how it feels.
I just feel like freedom.
We will see you next time on The Deep Dive. Take care of yourselves.